我南无马就西里耶，南无苏西里耶，南无我南无西耶娑哈哈，我南无马就西里耶，南无苏西耶，南无我南无西耶娑哈，我南无马就西里耶，南无苏西里耶，南无我南无西耶娑哈。因这当自己从哪来，将就把多大地要收集，他给全年级别从哪里，说了边界上给就把就。这当自己从哪来，将就把多大地要收集，他给全年级别从哪里，说了边界上给就把就。这当自己从哪来，将就把多大地要收集，他给全年级别从哪里，说了边界上给就把就。也别给主心没多长，让人心里的根拔地，三界心中面对无外，因为这边浪大心拉去把主一当，转那没达拉刚给呀达呀。
Bilhano do Chile, deixa eu contar hoje. Eu acho que nesse dia de lá, se dá Chile, eu não acho que a gente vai fazer a magia, mas já me mais para cá, já vai. Mesmo mande na teoria de lá do outro, eu não vou aqui, não há nunca, já vai. Mesmo mande de tudo sobre a na tema, tem no Chile, tem na data, já a gente vai lá na Chile na pessoa, eu chamo de
Please adjust your sitting posture according to 7 meditative postures of Varachana. And think, all sentient beings have been my mothers. And all sentient beings have been my mothers, not just once, but for numberless times. They are as kind as my mothers of this life. Even though all kind mothers sentient beings want happiness, and do not want even a small suffering. However, due to engaging wrongly with objects of adoptions and abandonment, they do not experience any happiness but suffering. In our minds, sincerely generate loving kindness towards all kind mothers sentient beings, thinking, how nice it would be if all kind mothers sentient beings were to have happiness. May all kind mothers sentient beings have excellent happiness. Or cause all kind mothers sentient beings to have excellent happiness. Lama, please bless me to be able to do so.
Is the work that did when under the duty here and so you want she never lost it. Eating a TV show other than it. Or she could go out the show to the shin of a mother and she did not pursue as vigilance.
Next, we generate compassion towards all kind mother sentient beings, towards all suffering mother sentient beings, thinking, how nice it would be if the bodies of all suffering mother sentient beings free from the class discordant with accomplishing virtue, such as physical pain, sickness, and problem caused by 4 elements. May the bodies of all suffering mother sentient beings be free from the class discordant with accomplishing virtue. Or free the bodies of all suffering mother sentient beings from the class discordant with accomplishing virtue. Lama, please bless me to be able to do so.
이제 동아지나 되게 완디나 이ችን 딱 동네다 나도 타라니 찾아가지고 지지 좋아다 그래서 대신에 말아보는 신경을 쓰고 있습니다.
How nice it would be if the minds of all suffering mother sentient beings were free from the past, discordant with a conflicting virtue, such as mental suffering, fear, and conceptual thoughts. May the minds of all suffering mother sentient beings be free from the class, discordant with accomplishing virtue. Or free the minds of all suffering mother sentient beings from the class, discordant with accomplishing virtue. Lama, please bless me to be able to do so.
Thinking what may thinking what you want to feel merging in what Kara can teach it all that which I would what is the other change?
How nice it would be if the speech of all suffering mother sentient beings were free from the class, discordant with accomplishing virtue, coarse and subtle negative speech such as telling lies. May the speech of all suffering mother sentient beings be free from the class, discordant with accomplishing virtue. I'll free the speech of all suffering mother sentient beings from the class, discordant with accomplishing virtue. Lama, please bless me to be able to do so.
Just the one thinking mountain of the course to be shall be about an individual cover. Oh, did you draw adoption? So this is the change.
How nice it would be if the three doors of all suffering mother sentient beings were free from the class, discordant with accomplishing virtue. May the three doors of all suffering mother sentient beings be free from the class, discordant with accomplishing virtue. I'll free the three doors of all suffering mother sentient beings from the class, discordant with accomplishing virtue. Lama, please bless me to be able to do so.
You just told you the weather, but you do that. So, you draw that which I would direction of the machine of the four. So, to see.
How nice it would be if all sentient beings were free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. I'll free all sentient beings from sufferings and the causes of suffering. Lama, please bless me to be able to do so.
You just do ordinary, so get the phone, check what and yes, do I do Kusula Yarana budget that didn't make us in Yanta with the Sanji Pavali. Later, but Kusula in the Yanta with the Sanji Layabi. It's in the 20 to the Yanta with the Sanji Pavali. You get over shower and simple justice.
Next, we generate bodhicitta. First, we ask ourselves, who should take on the responsibility to free all mother sentient beings from the sufferings of samsara and of lower realms? I should take on the responsibility to free all mother sentient beings from the sufferings of samsara and of lower realms. However, I do not have the abilities to do so now. Who has the abilities? Those who have achieved the perfectly complete enlightenment have the abilities to do so. Therefore, for the sake of all mother sentient beings, by all means, I will achieve the precious state of enlightenment.
世界长期这个啥子不到到小，那生工作吧的呢，然后你个等于就我是这个那么就去，对那边你怎么都是根本你这逻辑的这个地方的东西，那等于都这个这个的那么就是啥都是那个这个你那个事情。
Next, we generate all-encompassing yoga mind, the aspiring conventional bodhicitta that thinks, for the sake of all mother sentient beings, I will achieve the state of enlightenment. These transform into a mundis, a white mundis at one's heart. And the ultimate bodhicitta, that is one's mind becoming in one taste with emptiness, that the lack of inherent existence. These transform into a white five-pronged vajra on top of the mundis.
Next,
we meditate on emptiness for a short while. I exists neither intrinsically one with, nor intrinsically different from the aggregates. Thus, I am empty of inherent existence. As I say, it will be very good if we are able to conjoin our virtues of our three doors with the practice of six perfections. So the first one is generosity, and the nature of generosity is an intention of giving. These 2 hours of listening, contemplating, and meditating on Dharma, together with the virtues that I perform through my three doors, these are for the sake of purifying the sufferings and achieving the happiness of sentient beings.
等于就是这东西核心是什么呢？这里什么的，关于什么，这里就我什么东西，讲的，脸上都是结，告诉这里的基本告诉，但你那个年纪的时候，你把什么嘛就，你这个是不行的话呢，对你脸上都是要不结婚了，那不是别在的，这里核心是什么意思？
Next is morality. And morality is the minds of abandonment. So when I listen to Dharma, contemplate, and meditate on Dharma, I will properly abandon my physical and verbal negativities so that they do not manifest.
但是那时候的话说，为什么是我什么东西？脸上或者基本告诉，讲的女性呢，那个刚才开始中国人民讲到的水土吧，这个上班东西，这里对吧？呢，对，这个脸上或者没给他的水土吧，还是什么关系？
Next is patience. And patience is an undisturbed mind. So during these 2 hours of listening, contemplating, and meditating on Dharma, I will be patiently accept ever hardships and problems that arise in my physical body and in my mind.
这里是我的看到，有什么，这里是我什么东西？脸上光是结巴了， say Gawa the Toby Tony did. That's so much to buy now. Other thing to get at it. Yeah, it's a pregnant.
Next is joyous effort. Joyous effort is a mind that takes delight in virtue. So I will really engage in these 2 hours of listening, contemplating, and meditating on Dharma.
Santi Paginian what the contra Santi what the set gave me about Corobina, take the number of Santi was about the machine. When there's up was a cheap because of the Miran City, but not the Naya was the park, the Monroe. There's up was a con, there's up was a cheap shower to the past Sunday. Say cheap, take a buy up near to Vaina. Yeah, I think it's at the Santi Paginian is.
Next is meditative stabilization. Meditative stabilization is a mind that single-pointedly focuses on any virtuous objects. So I will single-pointedly focus my mind on the virtue of listening, meditating, and contemplating and meditating on Dharma without falling under the control of distractions and discursive thoughts.
That is the general question. The general saw that the community, but the children was about on ship. There's almost a car, the CJ Molaba Yabu, the shit to Wayna. That here is president.
Last is wisdom. Wisdom is an awareness that thoroughly distinguishes phenomena. So this, I will correctly understand the words and the meanings of the Dharma that I listen to, contemplate and meditate on.
What page is good up? Yes, okay, 20 then so did you come up to what page of Dutch or you under the chief this kind of
Set a good motivation. For the sake of all mother sentient beings, I will achieve the state of enlightenment. For this purpose, I will listen to the holy teachings and practice accordingly in order to benefit sentient beings.
你到了地里就是知道啥话，当然了，谁的过了地里就是知道啥话是，那对了，可能谁可能就前面把没说，有的谁在地里头，当不了，你把记那些更可是不能把没说，当不了你到那地方，那可能可能一个时候就没事，当然是你到那地方地方去呢，是吧
？So to continue where we stopped. So what to do while focusing the mind on the object. So this has 2 points. How to identify the focal object. In other words, objects of observation. So that is the basis for the mind and how to direct the mind toward it. So how to identify the focal object that is the basis for the mind. This has 2 points. General presentations of objects and identifications of objects for specific situations or specific contexts. General presentations of objects, again, this has 2 points, indicating the actual objects and indicating what person should meditate on which object. So first, I will talk about indicating the actual objects. Indicating the actual objects. Among the 4 types of objects the Blessed One taught for yogis, the first is pervasive objects, and the second one is objects that purify conduct, and the third one is objects for the skillful, and the last one is objects that purify mental afflictions.
Nobody wants to be passive. But to myself, they dish it on the double of the rock. We want to do that. We got much dish it. The dish was getting.
And the first one, pervasive objects, again, it has 4 types. So the ones you place your mind on without analyzing. The second one, those that are objects of analysis. The third one, the limits of phenomena, the ultimate modes of being and things in their variety. So this is the third one. And the last one is, and the accomplishment of a purpose.
I don't know that today one about this liberty. I don't know much about you was at the Canada, Mugala Kanda, which is who we conduct in Asia. I conduct you said you by in a better than not your. And you don't conduct much in the Gana, not on the Shiba. You need to let you batella, not how to be past time. Well, you go to Batella, on the River. Much because it's was the ship.
So the first one, the ones you place the mind on without analyzing, and the second one, those that are objects of analysis. So even though the objects of observation is the same, however, the way of engaging the objects is different. For the first one, the ones you place the mind on without analyzing, and this is the objects of observation for karma abiding. So you do not analyze. And the second one, those that are objects of analysis, then you analyze it. You analyze it, and then this is the objects of observation for special insight.
That's somebody the definition may be passed the law. And we think that's what the conduct is. Because of the conduct. Jimmy Bassio, the conduct. Mbonga, this is touched come to Jesus. What? Come to JJ Junior as about 20. Stuck up didn't rest here was
주의에 당감.
or to near one.
풍봉아.
Mbonga, she touched up, actually, on the Tower Kisha Mahi Bachi, she got on the Punto which you come at that in the issue. What?
So the limits of phenomena, the ultimate modes of being and things in their variety. So things in their variety, like for example, the 5 aggregates, 4 compounded phenomena, 18 elements or 18 constituents, 12 sources, and all phenomena. So basically, which is non-view, and all conventional phenomena that is non-view, and they are included, and they are things in their variety.
Oh,
sorry, which are non what? Ken?
Non-view.
Non-view. Oh, okay.
Not view. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Oh, my inbox.
that tower was showed. And was under the Punto Vichel got she was the shit. Punto Vichel got it. He never saw the Punto Vichel Shawa. So it was about one of Java. She had to get back somewhere that day. We were dinner.
Yeah, so basically, 5 aggregates, 4 compounded phenomena, 18 elements, 12 sources, and all phenomena, they are included in the things in their variety. So in other words, saying this is all conventional phenomena.
The Chitawa Seva, and they go to Shiba Nashi, Julian Buggy. Check it up, strongly take the Yaka. Someone to be doing the Kivarima with the Yaka taking it. One point to get what that he goes the country for wishes one. They don't begin to from that. I don't reach the one. Who is the viewer? You can pass them from the young hours the viewer to the one for that. The Tawasi one, dinner to this one.
能到話堂地線依堂讓先至做別動畫。
我是話話呢個地方問題，我係。
And the ultimate modes of being. So modes of beings are the reality or the truth or the emptiness emptiness of existing emptiness of inherent existence. So their reality, their truth, their emptiness of inherent existence on the basis of those dimensional phenomena that I mentioned just now, for example, 5 aggregates, 18 elements, 12 sources, and etc.
오다 간다 그러니까 내가 선발들이 좋다고 지내니 이게 다 아스와 좋다고 지내니 무슨 파스와도 가서도 근데 디다게 시고래 디다로 가도 누가 그거 스피드 그냥 와서 접이 누가도 누가 현다 손에 봐 놓으시오 그 정말 같이 되는 거로 와 간다 누가 간다데 이제 봐도 됐다와 니는 뒤로 해서 간다 스마트 뒤로 이렇게 쏘고 와
네, 그게 미바이나.
그냥 와서 누가 오면 쏘고 와 간다 기반하는 게 기빈이가 누구나는 누가 대수나 다 쳐대어 놔도 바로 접이는 거 놓았다 이래서 이게 말해서 나 단대 가서 되는 거 쳐대 쳐놔
So, yeah, and these pervasive objects, and they are called pervasive objects because it pervades the other objects of observation. So it pervades the objects that purify conduct, it pervades objects for the skillful, and it also pervades the object that purify mental affections.
어디 저 그다음에 비타들 쳤다와 진입이 가서 미시고도 와 미시고도 쳤다와 시고도 다 근데 진입이 가서 진입이 되기 하나 공부가 그것이 지지 좋은 때 가득이나 책 가득지도 비즈니스 쳤다와는 그래서 뭐라 쳤다와 했어 쳤다와는 그래서 어쩌래 되게 감이는 수만 와
So basically, when we talk about the ultimate modes of beings, it refers to the emptiness of inherent existence on the basis of those conventional phenomena that I mentioned just now. For example, 5 aggregates and 4 compounded phenomena.
아마 가서 좀 보시면 누가 넣었을 거가 들어와다 아마 그거 넣었을 거다 가서 그때한다 간다 그러다 이미 이거 대다 되는데 간다 아니 무슨 수기도 지내때 간다 내년에다 잡아다 그 시장 우리부터 와서 누가 타주는 것을 시장 우리부터 와 들어와 시장 우리부터 시장 들어와 어디에 내가 간다 그 시장 우리부터 우리다 간다 내년에 그래서 간다 자 이렇게 지구로 와 그러나 내년에다 이렇게 와서 내 시장에 같이 이렇게 잘했다 그거 연습도 되게 시원했어
And the accomplishments of a purpose. Then these accomplishments of a purpose is posited from the point of view of the results, from the results point of view. So achievement of a purpose. So meaning that when we practice observing those objects of observation of calm abiding, then we develop pliancy, which is the result. We achieve the pliancy that is its result, and we are free from the negative tendencies.
그래서 어디가 너무 방외시 되고 무슨 이름이가 좀 거기서 말로 되고요. 지금 무슨 말도 지금이 가지고 maybe has 가지고 되고 내가 무슨 카드라고 기타와 진행가 이해가 있어. 이거 좀 하고 뭐 그거 요소도 가지고 하면 그거 요소는 무슨 미신이들아 내가 지금 다 맞아. 뭐는 예시원에
Niba de juba,
지금이 바로
mijuba juba,
지금 이거 봐다 이름이 많이 시고로
jubin, miba,
나도 지금 거기 가는 게 바로 누가 되게 시고로
shibo deyan sama miba. And so you can also remember these 4 types of pervasive objects in this way. So the first one, the ones you place the mind on without analyzing, then you can remember it as the object of observations the objects of observations that you place your minds on. So the objects of observations without analysis. The first one, you place your minds on without analyzing, right? So it's the objects of observations without analysis. And the second one, those that are objects of analysis. And they are objects of observations of analysis, or just objects of analysis. The first one is object without analysis. The third one, the limits of phenomena. So you have already, you understand that these limits of phenomena refer to two, right? The ultimate modes of being and things in their variety. So then you can just remember the terms, the limits of phenomena. So in your mind, you know that it refers to these two. And the last one is the completeness of a purpose. So these are four types of pervasive objects. Then the second object of observation is objects that purify, conduct, and they are five. As for objects that purify conduct, five meditation objects serve as antidotes to one's predominant conduct in previous lives. So the conduct here refers to one's predominant conduct in previous lives. So this is referred to attachment, hatred, ignorance, pride, and conceptualization. In other words, for conceptualization is discursive thoughts. So the one's conduct is the attachment predominates one's conduct in previous lives, for example. So in order to stop or to suppress attachment, hatred, ignorance, pride, and conceptualizations, then we need to generate the antidotes. The antidotes are, respectively, the first one, repulsive. So repulsive in another word is ugliness. Repulsive or ugliness, love, when arising, the divisions of the elements or the differentiations of the elements in one's breath. So, and these objects that purifies conduct, so the conduct here refers to attachment and attachment and the rest, right? The attachment, hatred, and etc. So these are the obstacles to our accomplishments of unabiding. So we need to stop these obstacles. Stops in the way of suppressing them. So we need to suppress these obstacles to the accomplishments of our come abiding. So if we do not suppress them or stop them, then there's no way that we can cultivate come abiding. So, and these objects that purify conduct they are objects of observations mainly for those who newly cultivate come abiding. So that means that one hasn't developed come abiding yet, and then you rely on these objects that purify conduct to newly generate come abiding. Suatu de nangi midobar, nangi midobar. So respectively, the first one, repulsive or ugliness, and this is the antidote to attachment. So if we have predominant attachment, so meaning the attachment is very strong, then we have to cultivate its antidotes, which is ugliness, to suppress it. So, so basically, when we cultivate ugliness in relation to the objects to which we attach to, in relation to the objects that we attach to, then we think about the ugly part of that object that we attach to. For example, we can think about the 36 types of ugliness of the objects that we attach to. Like, for example, if the person, then the hair, meat, blood, and etc. So this, then you can search or you can refer to the footnote, and it lists 36 uglinesses. So, and other than these 36 types of uglinesses, and there are external ugliness as well. Like, for example, the shape or the colors, which is ugly or not attractive. When you cultivate the ugliness aspect of the object to which you attach. And when attachment becomes smaller, and only then you will have the ability to cultivate firm abiding.这点说你说说了有吧？我说说你，So the antidotes to attachment is repulsive or ugliness. So by observing the ugly aspects of the objects of attachment, as I mentioned just now, those pure substances, then we generate the aspect of mental possessor in relation to that objects. So you have the object, which is the ugly aspects of the object, those impure substances, and then your object possessor, which refers to your subjective aspect, then you observe those ugly aspects of the objects. So this object and the object possessors, they are meditated in the they are meditated in a way that they are distinct. They are meditated in a manner being distinct from each other. So for these types of object that purify hearts, then it's not like you generate your object possessor, which is your subjective aspect, in the nature of the object. So it's not like this. So in these types of meditations, the object and the object possessors are a distinct nature. So ugliness and attachment, then for this one, there are meditations. That is our topic later. So so in order to suppress hatred, then we need to cultivate love. So objects of observations is three: enemies, strangers, or friends or beloved ones. So we equalize our mind towards these three groups of being, and then we cultivate loving kindness. So the objects of observations is these three groups of mind, and then you generate your mind in the nature of loving kindness, which is your subjective aspect, is generated in the nature of mind. So in this case, the object is love, and the processes is also love. And like, for example, this kind of meditations of love or meditations on passions, they are meditations by generating the nature of it. And the meditations on ugliness, then they are meditations through the objects of modes of apprehensions. They are meditations taking the object of modes of apprehensions. So when we have strong hatred, if we do not cultivate loving kindness to suppress it, then there is no way that we can practice abiding. So we have to cultivate the antidotes, which is loving kindness, to suppress hatred. Then only then we will be able. Only then will we be able to practice abiding. So, however, these antidotes of loving kindness is not able to root hatred. Is not being able to utterly eliminate hatred. It only suppresses it. So if we have strong or predominant ignorance or confusions, then we need to generate the antidotes, which is thinking about the presentations of dependent arising to eliminate the ignorance and confusion. and we think about the divisions of the elements or differentiations of the elements as an antidote to eliminate pride, or as an antidote to eliminate pride. So pride is not something that we want. Like for example, in the Indian society, Indian society, they also have these customs of separate the people into different castes. And then if someone belongs to the low caste, and those high caste will look down on them, or will look down on them or treat them badly. So in terms of caste, or in terms of the race, or in terms of education level, when if one looks down on the other, and then the pride will rise in oneself when you compare yourself to those of a lower caste, or lower education levels, or lower or different race. So different race, or the race belongs to a lower caste. When so we need to think about the divisions of the elements to as an antidote to stop. So what does it mean is, for example, those divisions of elements such as our eye senses and etc. So this is produced in dependence on cause and conditions. So they are mere productions of cause and conditions. There's nothing to brag about. There's nothing to feel proud. So because in dependence on those cause and conditions, then different types of results arise. For example, the results, the excellent results, the middling result, and the small or lower results. So these different types of results arise respectively from their cause and conditions. There's nothing to brag about, because even though you have good qualities now, but it's changeable. So you have something now and change to non-existence, or you lose it. So even though you do not have those bad qualities, for example, or do not have those bad qualities or bad attributes, however, it is changeable. So when over time, then you might get those bad qualities, for example. So to stop conceptualization, in other words, is discursive thoughts. Then we have to focus our mind on our breath. So conceptualization or discursive thoughts are the distractions caused by attachment, hatred, and ignorance. So to counteract this, or to counteract this, then we have to focus our mind on our breath. So when we breathe in and breathe out, then we also count the number of times we breathe in and breathe out. Right? So our mind focus on on the breath, then we stopped the conceptualization of discursive thoughts. So this is how we stop conceptualization, by counting our breath. So when our mind is distracted, then we focus our mind on our breath. Then when our mind focus on our breath, we breathe in and breathe out, then our mind will go after the breathing, the breathing, instead of being carried away by the distractions, or by other distractions. So as I mentioned just now, as I mentioned before, when we do meditations at the beginning, before we start the actual meditations, then it's important to check whether our mind is distracted or not, or affected by distractions or not. If yes, then we focus our mind on our breath, or focus on the breathing. Then when our mind when we focus our mind on the breath, then it stops other distractions, because our mind is already focused on the breath, then it stops other distractions. So when our mind is focused, then only we start the sessions and to meditate on the actual objects. So then the third one is objects for the skillful are also fivefold. Objects of skill with regard to aggregates, the elements, the sense fields. The sense fields in another translation is sources, 12 sources, and the 12 links of dependent arising, as well as the established and the unestablished. So established and the unestablished it also means what is possible and is not possible. Pumbo tidak lama tu ba, right?
Pumbo tidak lama tu ba, kita juga tahu asal itu. Jadi mereka itu, siapa dia? Tak pumbo lah siapa sih? Siapa sih jatuh tu siapa?
Tahu tang tagi wan mereka tu.
Ada apa? Pumbo lama tu ba, dah tahu aja mereka sih. Siapa?
So objects for the skillful, the first one is aggregates, right? So aggregates such as form aggregates. So when one understands that, when one understands the non-existence of self and the non-existence of mind, so M-I-N-E, so what belongs to oneself, there is no, without depending on those aggregates. So without depending on those aggregates, there is no such self, or there is no such mind, M-I-N-E. So when you understand that, then this is the objects of skill with regard to the aggregates. So the objects for the skill, then the first one is objects of skill with regard to the aggregates. So knowing that there is no self and mind without that not depends on those aggregates, then this knowing is skilled in the aggregates. So then the second one is skill in the elements, objects of skill with regard to the elements. So the elements, there are 18 elements. So, and knowing that, because of the, something to, yeah, and knowing that one arises in dependence on its cause and conditions, its seat, and its parts. So knowing the arising of these in dependence on seat, cause and conditions, parts, and then is an object of skill with regard to the elements.
那近期的开发者的我说，我是近期时候弄起来小个啊，我说电网部都在什么也是网部都，网部都的这个拿去对，那么那些都多啊，对吧？那么那些
电脑电帮
哦，那么那些都多啊，电网部都当，那么那些都是吧？那刚才给讲的，那刚才讲的是呢，你说了开不进去，进去就了开吧说的，给你讲的去进去，不晓得呢，你现在呢去进去，说的话，说的去进去，是吧？去进去的，你进去把写过去，是吧？去进去的你进去吧，
意见了，
你进去吧，但哪个进去我们的大进去把写过去，哪个进去的，你我们的没写的大进去把写过去，是吧？没写的。总之没写的就书的这些你进去把写过去，
总之没写，
总之没写的你去书记了吧？你进去把写过去，你进去把写过去。我他肯定是全部人呢，这边的开发是在进嘛，背上都强调开发是吧？我你进去了开发是，我开始都是是不是吧
？So the objects of skill with regard to the sense views, in other words, sources. So there are 12 sources. So then how do you become skilled in those in relation to the sense view or sources is? So sources, there are 12 sources. So there are 6 sense powers to support, and there are 6 consciousness to support it. So 12 sources, so 6 sense powers to support, and the 6 consciousness to support it. So these are 12 sources. Besides that, there are external and internal sources. So the external sources are observed object conditions, and the internal sources, they are empowering conditions. For example, high consciousness apprehending form. So the form is the observed object conditions. So knowing this is being skilled in relation to the sense views or sources.
他经济中的话，就是我们劳力但是我这农会写上的话，他就体会的呢，就是这个话，就是经济中的，我们这个慢慢去读的话，我这个写上。他当然我开发时候，并且呢开发时候，但是这开档的行为呢，这样是开发的给你需要嘛的话，也行为的是很多。
So we learned these sources or 12 sources before, especially when we were learning Lamrim, mind and awareness and knowers. When we talk about these 12 sources, external sources, internal sources, and etc. I'm not sure whether you still remember it or not. So when we say that objects of skill with regard to the sense views, then how does one become skilled in relation to the 12 sources? And as I mentioned just now, you know that for example, the eye consciousness apprehending form, and that this form being the observed object conditions. So this is how you are skilled in relation to the 12 sources. So this skill, it doesn't generally refers to a skilled or wise or scholar. It doesn't generally refer to that.
当我在学了那个书面专门经历罗面是应该是他是经历中的，但是我以为在有的人参与是，那你不能有，觉得书面专门经历罗面就是他留在经历中的，他留了对吧？对个是吧？这个是讲到你讲到去，他讲到那就基本上去了就毛到， 这把是这个新的搞完了的业务，大看的，这把是这个新的王某的那些是搞完了业务，这个只是这把接到了我的，这个马上业务是吧？我第一个呢是苏梅的，第一个是那个的，是这个这个好的，那个什么了没把这给的给了吧？他这是这个的话，他只能那个就是对吧？渐渐的给我是吧？
So besides the Loric subject or classes, then in Heart Sutra we also talk about 12 sources. So in the Heart Sutra it says that there's no form, no form, no sound, no smell, and etc. So these 12 sources are also listed in the 12. These 12 sources also listed in the Heart Sutra as well. So the meaning of there's no form, no sound, meaning that there's no inherent existent form, there's no inherent existent sound, and etc. So even though the objects of analysis is the same, so however in different contexts, then the way to analyze the same object is different.
What do you like about Kanda Tindi Juni Kibata, the Kanda Diva Shivadua. Tindi Juni Kibasua, the Tindi Juni Sabatera, Tabata, Tabata, Dumo, Shiba, Tame by Mashizna, the Tindi Juni Kiba is with the Tabata. Tindi Juni Lazo to the Kanda Mitaba in Shiba, Dumo in Shiba, the Dumo in Shiba, Musirua, the Dame by Shiba. Or the music more Mitaba in Shiba. And
objects of skill with regard to the 12 links of dependent arising, how does one become skilled in relation to 12 links of dependent arising? So which is knowing that these 12 links of dependent arising is in the nature of impermanence, is in the nature of being is in the suffering nature, and also is in the selfless nature. So knowing that these 12 dependent arising are in these natures, then that is how one being skilled in relation to 12 things of dependent arising.
I think using the need any Maibala Keba, the thing about the need Maibala Keba Kanda, I Kanda Jukiole, Jib Deva, Nami Yidua, Jukiole, Nami Yidua, you are that name, they don't really need to shut the Gura, Jukiole and Jib Nami Yidua, we need to we need to see the knees. Wow, yes. And near Maiba said, how could that? You make one, one more. They didn't make a chat anymore. Jim McGuire to be the one directly of my Jim McGuire to be the one from other. Wow.
Jim McGuire,
maybe you the one you want. What didn't name Maiba chat? Or that didn't name Maiba chat as that. That on that day, she budget. That conduct Jim Giole, maybe the one she budget. Then Jim McGuire, maybe the one. More shimage. The beach shimage, why not? That did any money but a cable as it is. Need any money but a cable.
And the last one is the fifth one is the established and the unestablished. In other words, is what is possible and what is impossible. So, for example, so in relation to this, then it says what is possible, meaning that what is true or what exists in what is true. Yeah. So what is possible, in other words, also means what is true. For example, pleasant results arises from virtuous cause. Pleasant results arises from pleasant cause. Then this is possible. In another way of saying this is true. And what is not possible or what is impossible is from a non-virtuous cause, pleasant result arises. From a non-virtuous cause, a pleasant result arises. So this is not possible, right? So knowing this, the possible and the impossible, knowing these how one becomes skilled in relation to what is possible and what is not possible.
That is what I think also keeping me bang at the doors of a kid. 那刚才这个了，你们能就把这的修的话，那你们能就把这个你修的话，那就把你修的，那是要国的，其他的你把它，其他的你把它，是吧？其他的哪怕你把它，你修的话，我你们就你把你，其他联系不到了，说了那个，那你们就把去，你来不来？shirao taya da nga tsuda, pe dine, pe, umman de pala rapa tani ta, kuma sinti la sabali ya, uwa tani ya, di, ngoni ba chugaya chi na, ngoni ni adu mirwa, suhan la pe rapa tani ya, sume kli ya, umman di ya, shirao tani, bijimba, shirao, uwa shirao ge, pata pa pidi tu mirwa, ta sami ma kala, shirao taya da nga tsu, nyamu da sami tsu ma, nyamu ba shigwa rin, sawa ni ke pongu ya marwa,
啊，你什么单位呢？其他什么单位呢？
我学了个什么单位？咱节目就是忙活，你把起码的早点放下给就是什么的。俺这没了刚才了，把带的别，俺要不没事的把带的，那恐怕上的了，你说当的话，你也推些所有的话，也恐怕你，
讲的，
学了大手的，没了把放下到我这了，把到，对吧？俺这放下的也恐怕你也学的，也到的看到，咋看到？他年龄了什么都你必确实了看到吧？他年龄是嘛？过年也不接去，过年没得牙大回了吧？
原来恰先
对
对吧？
了，查询，忙过年，都忙过年的，这恐怕也牙大回了吧？我这里但现在但是不是那么多吧？
There are two objects that purify mental afflictions: the relative peacefulness of higher levels compared to lower levels. So, in other words, is the peacefulness, coarseness and peacefulness of higher levels and lower levels. So these I will talk about it later. And the 16 aspects of the Four Truths, such as impermanence and so forth. So regarding the comparative coarseness and peacefulness of higher levels and lower levels is like this. So you see the peacefulness of higher levels, and then you see the coarseness of lower levels. So the coarseness of lower levels then is like an object of abandonment. So you don't want the coarseness, you don't want the lower levels. So you see the coarseness of it, and you want to be born in the higher levels. So you see the peacefulness of it. Then you engage in the meditative absorptions. So, for example, if one wants to be free from desirariums, then one see the coarseness of desirariums. Yeah, one sees the coarseness of desirariums or coarse aspects of desirariums. So when you see the coarse aspects of desirariums, you've stopped afflictions such as attachments towards the objects in desirariums. Then you see the peacefulness of higher realms. So in this case, for example, the form realm. So form realm is a higher realm than the desirarium. So you see the peacefulness of higher realm. So by seeing in this way, by meditating in this way, then it suppresses afflictions such as attachment towards the lower level. Even though it doesn't eliminate or abandon those afflictions, however, it is able to suppress those afflictions in relation to lower levels.
他等到点牛目多的了，牛能把牛做的了，那刚才牛目，羊没把些吧，当然是其他带的牛目是，牛什么羊没把些吧，其他的嘛都，早你帮嘛也是不是吧？那么就，我们过年没不讲，牛那个生的基本总的关键，那刚才点也嘛做，不是，那点什么到了，比如这个了不能生关键，对不对？没什么啊，没什么。 在这里面造的，这里面可能你我就你写过来，你可能不就爱，在就爱的我你不可能就爱，就当你我把造的不会，有哪里的对吧？用到你把这个在你去到给他考虑到去，让他给你造的话，对吧？
So there are two objects that purify mental afflictions, right? So the here it means that it weakens the mental afflictions or it suppresses mental afflictions. So the first object, the relative peacefulness of higher levels compared to lower levels, is the object that weakens mental afflictions or weakens or suppresses mental afflictions. And the 16 aspects of the Four Truths, impermanence and so forth, is the object that totally eliminate mental afflictions or that uproot mental afflictions or abandon mental afflictions from the root. So the first object weakens mental afflictions or it suppresses mental afflictions. And the second object, 16 aspects of the Four Truths, impermanence and so forth, this is the object that abandon totally or abandon mental afflictions from the root. And so when we focus our mind on the 16 aspects of the Four Truths, such as impermanence and so forth, and by the power of meditating on these 16 aspects of the Four Truths, then we abandon afflictions from the root. So in this regard, the objects that purify conduct, objects that purify conduct are special objects in that the attachment and so forth of those who act predominantly from attachment and so forth are easily stopped and concentration is easily achieved in reliance on them. So if one attachment is very strong or is predominates our conduct, then we should observe the objects that purify conduct. So without doing so, then we are unable to cultivate calm abiding. Yeah, so one observe those objects that purify conduct, for example, attachment, then we abandon in terms of suppresses those afflictions, those predominant afflictions, and only then will we be able to generate cultivate calm abiding. And the objects for the skillful are good objects for shamatha because they negate a self of persons apart from those phenomena and are therefore in harmony with the arising of the special insight that realizes selflessness. So the objects the objects for the skillful are good objects for shamatha or good objects for calm abiding because they negate a self of persons that is not included in those phenomena and are therefore in harmony with the arising of the special insight. So negating a self of persons is harmony. If we need to generate special insight, we also need to negate the self of persons, right? So, and when we cultivate the objects for the skillful, when we observe the objects for the skillful, when we cultivate shamatha, we also need to negate the self. So we need to negate the self of persons because they are this self of persons is not included in those phenomena. So therefore, it says that it is in harmony with the arising of the spectrum itself.
어디서 건다 내가 이거 땅을 지나가 가지고 찍이다 이거 좀 미스터리와 어디에서 와서 내가 찍이 이거 그냥 좋아 필링 거를 해서 와서 내가 넘버 좀 이거 좋아 근데 넘버 좋아서 와서 내가 뭔지 안 거냐 봐지다 자와니 거의 비마다 줄라 이렇게 디센진 거 힘이 보러 어때 디센진 때문에 가다 그냥 와서 내가 찍이는 거라고 해서 이 차례 와서 내가 하고 봐서 지금 와
ini kata dingunggu kono batangan zawane po aro. Ini di nyomong tang. Nyomong nam dong ye mi pa de. Ini niga ya ku. Di ngunggu yang kono nggu re zawane yang pang ye. So the objects that purify mental afflictions are of great significance in that they become great antidotes to mental afflictions. So the antidotes to mental afflictions meaning that it can it suppresses the manifest mental afflictions, the general antidotes to mental afflictions in terms of suppressing the manifest mental afflictions, and also eliminate the mental afflictions from the root. Sangi ku ina de shine jwa ki mi tenji ro mi pa ji ro arung la te ne yang shine tu tu ro di mi pa shi ji ni yu mi pa shi. So therefore so there are no pervasive objects apart from the objects listed above. So as I mentioned just now, pervasive objects, it pervades the other types of objects of observation. So therefore there are no pervasive objects apart from the objects listed above. So meaning that pervasive object pervades other types of objects of observation. So therefore concentration should be accomplished in reliance upon the objects of shamatha with their special purposes. Those who practice concentration with a pebble, piece of wood, and the like as the objects of attention clearly do not know the presentations of objects of meditations. So even though one can cultivate calm abiding by observing pebble, wood, brick, and etc. However, in terms of the special purposes that one contemplates while observing those objects, then focusing our mind on pebbles and woods and so forth do not have such special purposes. So the special purposes of accumulating merits and also purifying purifying our obscurations. So it doesn't have those special purposes if you observe pebble, piece of wood, and etc. So, and the common objects of observations, the common object that we use to accomplish calm abiding is the Buddha's image.
是给把对付的是，那得那现在我看了他的看到是几个钱了哇，我的是到底收不多啊？
Indicating what person should meditate on which object in accordance with what is set forth in the questions of Ravata Sutra is not that the persons with a predominant affliction, ranging from those in whom attachment predominates to those in whom discursive thought predominates, should rely on the individual objects of attention specified, ranging from the repulsive to one's breath, respectively. So, in fact, who should meditate on what object? When we talk about the actual objects, we have already covered that. So for example, if one is hatred, then one cultivates loving kindness. If one has discursive thoughts or conceptualizations, then one cultivates the antidotes of focusing our mind on the truth.
那你要看到那个多少，那个结果的，那年龄去年多少年呢？那我去的，你把这个搞那点的这个没事，我把它结果拿去你把那个电话用没事哇，那个的，今年就是家用的，你们最重要呢，你把这个那点这个过程的没事，是吧？结果拿去你把你落掉我用没事，然后等到桥上修桥上的修了半年没事。
Those with balanced conduct and those with slight mental afflictions may concentrate on any one object explained above that they are happy with. So they do not need a specific one. So for those with a balanced conduct and with slight mental afflictions, then is not is not a must that they must use the object that purifies the conduct. They can use any objects that mentions just now. So, however, if the afflictions is predominant, then one must rely or one must observe that purifies conduct.
我觉得我看到，那恰数是提出7个的嘛，是对吧？是吧？对了，恰数啊，是7个，那恰数是7个的情况是可能记得那个是吧？是吧？对了，恰数啊，是7个是吧？的，但就我们呢是恰数啊，还叫公布习惯，因为恰数啊，一个还叫公布去全部是个要么的，但我嘛对吧？公布是全部要么的，那恰数就是个也初级呢，这个恰数啊，进人过电器，进人过计划去。 假如就是有全部进来，但有全部进来接有啊，有啊，假如就是有全部进来呢，有的来场所就是我进去，我在等于是叫我嘛的，我全部进来我嘛对吧？去那地方肯定是多的吧？假如先求啊，这个情况先求啊什么。
In this regard, predominance of one of the 5 mental afflictions of attachments and so forth means predominance of the 5 mental afflictions of attachment and so forth. So means it talks about how strong one's 5 mental afflictions of attachment and so forth is. So, for example, due to habituations, due to habituations to attachments and so forth in previous lives, so long-term attachments and so forth arise towards small objects of attachments and so forth. So due to the habituations in our past lives and due to not applying antidotes in our past lives, then even though the objects of attachment is small, however, because of these situations and not applying antidotes, then the attachment will arise strong in our mind and it will last for a long time.
我假如前两么说啊，是前两么结果说的。 因为我们看到，当时发生了公报就在某地方，你得到了名誉是买到了，你得到有了，恰是前续情况，是吧？有了被恰是新情况，就是我没救啊，没救啊，这没救啊没嘛，恰是早的没救啊没，那就是我的旧情况没救啊些，你这个不也是恰是全年没事，是吧？全年没事。
So for those strong afflictions, so to small objects of attachment and so forth, attachment will arise for a long time, and it will become a strong attachment will arise and it will last for a long time. So don't mention objects of attachment which is middling or the great objects of attachment. So those with balanced conduct have not been habituated to attachment and so forth in previous lives, but they still do not see them as faulty. So therefore, even though predominant long-term attachment and so forth do not arise towards their respective objects, it is not that they do not occur at all. So those with balanced conduct, meaning that they have not been habituated to attachment and so forth in their previous lives, but they do not see them as faulty. They do not see them as a fault. So in even though the strong attachment do not arise, or attachment that lasts for a long time do not arise, however, it doesn't mean that they do not occur at all. It means that it still arise sometimes.
You just you read that.
So after we talk about those with strong conduct in terms of afflictions predominates their conduct, and we also talk about those with balanced conduct. Now we talk about the third group of people, those with slight mental afflictions. So I have not been habituated to attachment and so forth in their previous lives, and owing to the fact that, among other things, they do see them as faulty. And so those with slight mental afflictions, meaning that they have not been habituated to those afflictions in their past lives, and they do see those mental afflictions as faulty. So because of that, in relation to a strong and abundant objects of attachment, so if there are strong objects of attachment present, and there are many of them, then attachment and so forth only arise slowly. They do not arise immediately, they arise slowly. And attachment, for example, do not arise at all toward medium or small objects of attachment. Moreover, those with predominant attachment, or another one of the five, take long to accomplish shamatha. Those with balanced behavior, not that long, and those with slight mental afflictions accomplish it quickly. So this is explained in a general context. So those with predominant attachment and so forth take a long time to accomplish shamatha or calm abiding, and those with balanced behavior, and then not that long. It doesn't take long time to accomplish calm abiding, and those with slight mental afflictions will accomplish calm abiding quickly. So this is presented in a general context. So, however, even though one has a predominant mental affliction such as attachment, so if one generates strong antidotes to the predominant afflictions, then one can quickly achieve calm abiding as well.
대주가 대잖아. 이거는 저는 와. 안도 뭐지 그래. 근데 이게 대다 처음 제가 네가 문바 이거 나와 있어. 한번 나와 있어. 와 이거 지금 이거 대다 처음 내가 네가 문바 이거 나와 있어. 이거 나와래. 그래서 봐. 이 직관에 간다. 지금 봐. 한도 문바 지금 키워요. 와. 이 있어요. 이제 네, 어떤 리치가 yes. 어디 있어 보죠.
So all these objects are the objects of come abiding and special insight. So these objects are the objects of observations when you want to cultivate come abiding, or when you want to cultivate special insight. They are the objects for you to cultivate come abiding and special insight. So being the objects of observations, they are similar. However, the way of engaging those objects, then it makes a difference. The way of engaging with those objects makes the difference. So objects of observation of time abiding is your mind, one's mind single-pointedly focused on that object without analysis. Then it becomes an object of time abiding. So the similar object, so if you analyze observing the same object, then it becomes the object of observation for special insight.
와서 제가 나중에 미바다 자 깊이 미바서 들어와. 그래 신이 싸도 두바 미바서 시치아요. 그래서 봐. 미사도 두바다 제가 나중에 미바다 깊이 미바서 치와요. 그래서
Con yang cái số
그래서 미바나게 미바다. 미바서 와서 신이 싸도 두바 미바라. 그래서 시치아 망치어 그래서 그래서 봐. 망치와. 너무 나죠. 봐서 제가 와서 나 뭐는 좀 너무 나죠. 미바다. 네. 토신이 이 토신이야 이 신이 별로야 제발제 대신이야 내가 군에 군도 빼야 இல்ல 뭐지 모르겠어
kumpitan thì
이야 다시 또 참.
tốt sanni
또 참이야 다시
Đi vào cái đấy.
이제는 기내 공부로 와
kumpi
이게 그래서
va kare
먼저
oh
먼저 좀 답하시니 사바브를 나 이거 말했어 이거 사바브를 신이 사바브를 기비니까 기비니까 맞아 들이 해서
to so objects that purify conduct and objects for the skillful ones, they are the main objects for accomplishing come abiding newly. So they are the main objects of observations for newly accomplishing come abiding, cultivating come abiding. And objects that purify mental afflictions are mainly for those who have already achieved come abiding, and to cause the come abiding to increases the come abiding, or to enhance the come abiding that one has already achieved. So then one uses the object that purify mental afflictions.
근데 그 제목이니까 니가 가스고 비비바에서 다 되는 거는 신이 똑똑히 지지바데 신도와 그렇게 돈을 주고 또 단다 고모스 가서 드라마 이거 지게 지어와 같이 보여요. 그거는 단에 거치네 공원이 갖고 비바데 그렇게 막 시에게 상을 제대로 잡기도 좀 좋아이나 그 진짜가 좋아하는 거 잘 있어.
So up to this point is the general explanations on the objects or objects of observations. So next coming class, I'm going to talk about the objects for specific situations or contexts. So this is something that we also have to pay attention to. So I will stop here. If you have any questions, then you can ask now. If there is none, then we'll stop.
Can I ask Geshe-la to give an example of neutral pride in the previous class?
Neutral pride.
Yeah, give an example.
Geshe-la ni zinda ngama la ini di Geshe-la gi tu sung song sa ngagi de kasi long ma den da wo. Tang neutral pride. Yeah, atu ngagi da wo ina di neutral pride. In what context did Geshe-la mention about this neutral pride?
We also did it in our most recent review class, and it pops out neutral pride. Just want to know.
In the context of afflicted mind, the eight consciousness.
Oh.
Yeah, when Gisela was
Planets?
explaining
You're talking about planets, is it?
No,
Afflicted mind meaning the planets class, right?
yes.
Oh, okay. Aleo. Ini dia cerita giko lah ni di nyanyi giko lah di sini weh ni jual ni kan di sini weh nyanyi giko lah. Ini ngau tu di ngaji jauh ini ngaji kata ngaji lung mati weh ngaji lung mati gi ngaji neutral pride.
We said that the afflicted mind is not perceived as afflicted. Yeah. So that's why you have, for example, pride, which is neutral.
ngaji lung mati. Di kunci lami ni. Nyunyi di kata di kunci lami ni. Number ngaji be ngaji ini ngau de lung mati lo. Ngau de deep lung mati deep lung mati lo lah. Apa rebe? Nyunyi ini di panggil mana? Jadi panggil mana? Oh, ngau de ini di deep lung mati aja. Masuk. Yeah, so so when we talk about the foundation consciousness or the mind basis of all, and also the afflicted mind. So afflicted mind observing its object, which is mind basis of all or foundation consciousness, and then its subjective aspect is its subjective aspect is apprehension as I. So apprehend the objects of observation, which is foundation consciousness, as I. So these, the nature of these apprehension as I is a neutral obscurations. Deep long mate. Deep long mate. Deep long mate. Deep long mate na. The neutral obscurations, neutral objects of obscurations. Yeah, I think I love you now. And yeah, so if you have if you have more minutes questions, then you can ask in minutes class.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah. Condition. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It seems that there's a lot of object of observations for one to choose from. So I just wonder, seems that one need to go through a lot of analysis of oneself before we can choose the object of observation, or could we just start with something simple, or just observe our the breathing of our breath first, and then slowly progress to other levels. Yeah. Thanks. That's my questions.
근데 이 당연히 미바 시절 수인 바이실라 미바 시냐 라인이 안디 나로라 안디 낭세 막 뭐요로 디자인이 안디 미 수수질라 수수질 렘부기 미바지 동거로 그냥 담이야 라인이 아주 수수게 내추 강인바 anything 요몽 강인바 시시와 강인바 anything 아고리마도 따기 지워리마도 그냥 아주 미바디 담 구입니다 렘보지 미바 렘보지 anything 담 두게 말이스 방소양 내라보기 토네 그냥 디 가장 아주 고주와이나 이 차도 아주 우주문라 리심 에와이나 에 제라 신의 디 미바 신다라 셈 진나디기요나스 신의 주야라
누구 이렇게 제목이었어. 좀 저거를 맞아. 이 너무 스마 우리스 너도 자도 좋아. 나 지금 와서 이게 이게 그 멤버 소소소소 되게 저 시거든. 나 간다. 내가 시다 또 아지요. 소소소소소라 멤버 때문에 멤버도 다 이거 치고 있어. 그럼 이게 멤버도 그 소소가 갖고 있고 카드 멤버 때문에 멤버 때문에 이게 누구도 따다 써야 돼. 이거 치고 있어. 자, 근데 많이 봤다. 간다. 딱 가서 너 운동 써야 되는 가서 나도 지나 나도 가서 배워. 그 대리 차서 휴치고 싶은 생각이나 뭐 시작하거든요. 운동 시작하거든요. 와. 지난 가서 운동 써는 거 지난 가서 많이도 풀파 가야 돼. 이게 했어. 그래서 근데 다소다 시다 휴치고 버려버리나 뭐 무슨 시간도 그
리안지 미바 용다기 미바요나 지 미바
지금 봐도 지금 봐서 가서 가지고 지금 변에 상황에서 그냥 미바 이게 쉬워요.
네 가서 대 상기 보이나 상기 입고의 지 미바 용다기 미바
제가 봐서 제가 깎아는 만드는 게 그래서 또 집에 다니는 내 집고 그래서 집에 들어가는 가서 또 미바들 하고 가서 상지 싶으면 비지 세트 보이나 장이야 오늘 요시라서 내가 슬럽다 야요 내서
세상에 단도 가장 아주 소소라 대단지체 난 요모 수시와 요아이나 은이한디 토도기 링년보디 때나마도 그냥 대신에 드라카바로
카드 파일 휴체에서 휴체요 그래서 앞에 다시 휴체하고 싶지만 난 오종이나 한국 말에서 끊는 것이 그래가지고 말했어. 와, 어디 나시 간다. 저도 가서 공부 해야 되는 거서 카드 가서 뛰어나오지 못한다. 그래서 또
안도일이 소소라 대단지체 당보디 한다지치
Yes.
Yeah, so even though in general it's important to focus our mind on one's breath, on one's breath. However, it is the antidotes to stress or to counteract conceptualizations or discursive thoughts. So, because if, for example, we say that focus our mind on breath is good in general. However, if you have predominant attachment, for example, predominant attachment, then if you, even though we say that focusing our mind on breath is good, however, it doesn't really suppress the predominant attachment. So still, it's very important to check oneself and see which object is more suitable to oneself. So if, for example, if if one has predominant attachment, then it's still is more powerful to generate the antidotes of repulsive or ugliness to one's predominant attachment. Because generate these antidotes of ugliness is more direct, more direct and more powerful to counteract one's predominant attachment, for example. So it's good to check oneself and then choose suitable objects.
Without cut group, whatever, so this. That's also condemned this chair. You know, so that would never say the way it's cut to Jehovah. Without the possibility of you, I wasn't go that they never cut to one of that. That without one of them would wear. So
young Chasm,
watch us.
Yamoto.
That's without why not pay. Yeah, they would only pay without the sugar. You know, the wind which Jehovah in that is a cheaper not the way it is now. The Shirako cutting Shiraji to Marisua. That's that was so Jehovah is good. So to pay some develop it. I see the Kawaina, I cheat near Matuba Road, do not think when you want to do what I say the Kawaii, you do around Shirina. Yeah, when you want to really do it.
Yeah, so it still depends on one's mental dispositions, one's inclinations, and one's dispositions. Then we choose objects that is suitable to you. So then that object of observations becomes direct and more powerful antidote to one's dominant attachment, for example. So, for example, if one has a predominant attachment, then one can generate antidotes of. If one has predominant attachment, then one can generate the antidotes of ugliness. So, besides that, one can also generate the antidotes of impermanence. So, by thinking about impermanence, it also expresses one's attachment. So, it depends on one's inclinations and dispositions as well. So, even though focusing one's mind on breath is an antidote. For example, if one has predominant attachment, so by focusing one's mind on breath is an antidote. However, this antidote is not powerful enough to one's predominant attachment, and is not a direct antidote to one's predominant attachment as well. So, however, focusing one's mind on one's breath is a good antidote to cultivate if one has fall under the control of distractions.
Tell you, let's just stop here. Do I just don't start?
So yeah, so stop here. If you have any other questions, please ask in comment to us.
Oh, you don't let me do what you got to do. What you was a joke with you to the busy Jimmy on the southern border. So you came out of the one you shoot or give us. Then I couldn't have us to take it on the sword to some in your second. Like you should have. You just wish you give us when you get home at you know. Onto the Nias and you do it. Listen, get silly, isn't it? Civil permits, but when you do that, it's up to the deal with the wicked.
So thank you. And we conclude with dedications. We dedicate the roots of virtue accumulated, especially through these Dharma discussions, maybe a complete course for Buddha Dharma to flourish in all directions, and for all sentient beings to experience excellent happiness. We also dedicate these roots of virtue to all upholders of Buddha's teaching, mainly His Holiness, to live eons long, good health, and may their holy wishes and enlightened activities be accomplished instantaneously and be spread in all directions. We also dedicate these roots of virtue to the world peace. May pandemic, wars, conflict, a disaster be pacified immediately. And we also dedicate these roots of virtue, especially to our beloved teacher, Lama Rinpoche. May Rinpoche's holy wishes be accomplished instantaneously, and may the unmistaken reincarnations of Rinpoche be swiftly returned and continue to turn the wheel of Dharma for sentient beings and for the sake of teachings, so that we will have the opportunity to receive Dharma teachings from Rinpoche's again, just like before.
Doggy Junior,
Tabe Kewa Di Tendang Kewa Kanda Kambe Na Shiva Jizuen Lo Sang Java Yi Tebe Yingbo Rindo Se Jie Shuo Ju Sen Jo Rinpo Je Ma Ke Pa Na Ke Kyu Je Ke Pa Nyam Ba Me Ba Yang Ko Ne
高白话说将别保卫知道健康呢，上波的样的心的对他可以接受到了解，给我对他当接绕多。那人不接嘛，给把那给有几给把娘把没把养过的。白话说人别到啊，人不接嘛，给把那给有几娘把没把养过的，广东白话说。也送到这边了，其实是在看见点对跟上那边我的生活做了，生活的所对的路途会说，偏偏的马路吧，看来就会上面一些诺，肯定从没的生活做了，生活的所对些路途会说，然后走路上也会认识比我些，那那是一天就马路边天天不把就会给的是，对对的人不接，适当对被自己被挖了，就是被国家进出被进出妈妈说话的，就会国际不接会的。当马球做话一天了，其实只管这边门都不希望是的一人帮，也就是那当个是当地当地当国际都没特别让多少别种介绍对这边都有些说。因为各位新疆的平常的话嘛，有机会你只要是往的人家所以下边时间报道的就。